All gave some gave all. Some would march on, others would fall. There are no winners in war when you consider the cost. You cannot justify the thousands of lives for our own that were lost. Wars leave scars that in time may fade, but not without taking a toll. However, the deepest wounds are those that scar the very heart and soul. For those that saw action during wartime, I'm sure without a doubt, they've had to live with the memories of fallen comrades, their brothers, someone they cared deeply about. And all the families left behind with only their memories to carry them through, also paying the price of freedom won for me and you. We are all aware that times have changed, and yet there are certain things we must never forget. Be proud of our flag, and long may she wave, and long may we remember what so many gave.
I'm Paul Wemoff. I lived in Humphrey, Nebraska when the draft came out, and I was number 11, and I knew I was going to get drafted anyhow, so I just went and joined the service for 2 years in the Army. The biggest challenge was while I was at active duty was to stay alive and stay alert. And I did that, and it worked. The biggest day of when I was in the service was the day I got out. I couldn't wait to get out of the service because I had enough after being in Vietnam. And I tell you what, it felt so good to be home. I was just so happy I was out. So, what did I do to get my mind off of the service? I drank. That was my way to get my mind off of it. The most important part while I was in the service was, after I got out, was to be able to go to cemeteries and be with the military when they had military services. Another proud moment was when I got to go to Washington and put the flag on the unnamed soldier's grave. Sorry. That was really an honor. In the military, it affected my life. I don't remember a whole lot. I don't remember my high school days. I lost them. I don't remember hardly any of the guys that was in the military with me. And I became an alcoholic. That's how my life was like after I got out of the service. I'm still a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober now for 29 years. And I farmed until we had a tornado and took away everything. I didn't have any buildings left, no nothing left. And that still wasn't bad enough to make me drink because I didn't want to go back to where I was at. And I went and got another job for another farmer, and I worked for him for a while until the job came up at school, and my wife, Diane, worked at the school. She goes, "Paul, why don't you apply for that job?" I says, "I never applied for a job in my life. All I did is farm. What am I supposed to do?" She goes, "Just go in and apply and see what happened." And I'll be darned, they hired me. And I tell you, I really loved that job. That was a fun job. And I was head maintenance there and head of custodial there for 11 years, I think. And I took care of the Coleridge school. And then when Coleridge joined Laurel, I was head maintenance for both schools. And because I wanted to keep busy. I had to keep busy to keep my mind off of everything, and that was fun. But I'd have never been able to get them jobs if I wasn't sober today. That was huge. And while I was sober, I got the Golden Heart Award at Belly Hope out at O'Neill. I don't know how many people get that, but I got the Golden Heart Award there too, so that was neat. And now I'm on the county Veterans Board, and didn't think I'd ever do that either. It was all them things I'd have never had if it wouldn't have been for staying sober. And that's all I have.
My name is Nick Folkers. I enlisted in the United States Army in 1985 at the age of 18. I served in the regular Army for 4 years, roughly 6 months basic training in AIT, 2 years in Niederoberstein, West Germany with the 6th of the 29th Field Artillery attached to the 8th Mechanized Infantry Division during the Cold War, lastly stationed in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I am now a partner owner of a diesel repair shop in Hartington, Nebraska. My military occupational specialty was 63 Delta, self-propelled field artillery systems mechanic. I liked overseas duty the best. My job was important and I knew it. After leaving the service, I attended 2 years of diesel tech at Northeast Tech in Norfolk, Nebraska, while working at a couple different truck repair shops. In 1994, I went into the repair business with my brother. My service taught me to be self-motivated and to be able to function in adverse conditions, something I also learned growing up on a small family farm. As a child, I always knew I would join the Army. Boot camp was tough. I decided the fastest way out was straight down the middle. I'm proud of my time spent in the Army. I recommend today's youth consider serving in the armed forces. I made close friends in the service and stay in touch somewhat on social media. I saw quite a few of them about 4 years ago at a reunion in Helen, Georgia, and was surprised that no one really felt a need to catch up on anything. We just picked up where we left off. I'm an active member of American Legion Post 128 Nebraska and recommend such an organization to any veteran. Common ground of service-related experience transcends differences in profession and age.
I'm Gary Howie. I'm originally from Watertown, South Dakota. I enlisted in the Army when I was 17, and I chose the Army because of what they offered me. Right now I'm living in Hartington, Nebraska. It was a 3-year term that I enlisted for. In order to get that, I had to be guaranteed 9 months of school and then again a year in Germany, which generally should put me at about 2.5 years, which should have meant that I didn't go to Vietnam, but that didn't work. Just at the time, you either had to enlist or were drafted, and if you were enlisted, you had an opportunity as far as you wanted to do in the Army. The big thing is the first time I went away was on a plane to go to boot camp, and that's scary. And then the first thing you get there, everybody, the people that are in charge are screaming and hollering and in your face, and you wonder, what did I get myself into? But it's one of those deals most of us had to go through. I spent 1 year in Germany with the 7th Corps. My job there was communications, and then I was on my leave going to see some family in Amsterdam, and I got orders to report back to the base, and I was going to Vietnam. So I got back to base in Bamberg, didn't even have an opportunity to get all my stuff sent home, and was sent overseas. The loneliest time for me was the holidays. Of course, Germany was the worst because my family's not real good at writing letters, and the holidays, it was really my first holiday away from my family. And it was just one of those deals. You had to get used to it. The unit I was with in Germany was spit shine polish. We were inspected every week, so we did a lot of marching and that kind of stuff, which I didn't care for, but I didn't think in order to get out of it I'd have to go to Vietnam, but that's the way it happened. I was assigned to the 4th Infantry Unit in Vietnam, and my MOS was tactical communication. So what I did over there was basically, I ran radios, operated radio. I spent some time in helicopters, spent some time in gun truck, and I ended up driving the executive officers up and down the pass. So that we were getting hit just about every trip. But when we got back to base camp one time, we had the unit that provided transport. They did carried weapons and so forth up and down the pass, and one of them was a driver that I knew. And when he came in, he had a wound on his leg, and they came in fast, so nobody tried to treat him out there. He had a wound on his leg and was bleeding really bad. I put pressure on his leg, tried to stop the bleeding, but by the time we got him to the medics, it was too late. And you know, when you know somebody that that's no longer there, they, you know, you didn't get a chance to say goodbye. You didn't get a chance to do anything. They were just gone. And when I went to the Vietnam Memorial, I went at night because I'm not good at that stuff. And I went down through the book, the people that went over with me, and we only lost one over there. But yeah, I guess it's a sick feeling. It's just, what do you do? And then you all also wonder, well, how come he got it and I didn't? You know, it's just a lot of unknown questions that you need to answer to yourself. There was a lot of problem when Vietnam veterans came back, and that's just the way it was. There wasn't a whole lot you can do about it when I came back from Vietnam. But when I came back from Vietnam, I ran into some, what I say would be strange situation. We had to wear our uniforms in order to fly, reserve standby. And I sat down, there was a young girl sitting next to me, and as we got into the air, a lady come up and started chewing this girl out. She says, "I don't want you sitting with him." And I thought my breath was okay. I thought I'd taken a shower there. But she says, you know he was in Vietnam, but I don't want you sitting with him. So she drug her to the back, and from that point on, I thought, dang, this is the way it's gonna be. I'm not gonna like this at all. So when I got to the airport in Denver, I bought all civilian clothes and changed and went on from there. My military experience was fairly decent. As a matter of fact, after I got out of the regular Army, I spent another 8 years in the Iowa Nebraska National Guard before being dismissed because I had an armored personnel carrier accident, and it damaged my neck and my back. And while I was in Vietnam, I was blown out of a bunker. So I didn't get my 20 years in, but I did get 14 and a half years in, and was discharged on a medical discharge. So as far as the citations and awards I won, I got my 3 from Vietnam. And then after my 3-year obligation, I actually went into the Iowa and Nebraska National Guard. So I ended up with several more ribbons and citations from there. But it was a good experience. I ended up, meeting a lot of good people, and I met some bad ones too, but that's everywhere. But if I was, if I do it all again, I probably would do it, but I would probably pick a different occupation, MOS, than what I had before. But nowadays, the veterans, I think they have a really, really good opportunity because they have funding. They can go to school, they can get loans, they can get numerous different things. So I think now, since Iraq and Afghanistan, that what I was worried about is one of those kids, I call them, because we were all kids, I was just turned 20 when I went to Vietnam, how they would be treated when they got back. And I was so worried about that because I knew how I felt about it. But boy, it was a big relief because people were treating them with respect, welcoming them home and so forth. And that calmed me big time because I saw what in the 60s and 70s what the Vietnam veterans had to go through. And I didn't want anybody else to have to go through that.
I'm Dean McGregor. I'm living in Hartington. I enlisted in the service when I was 17 years old. I now live in Hartington. Boot camp was just, when you go to a Navy boot camp, it isn't so much the drill, it's more keeping clean, washing our clothes, hanging them up every night, cleaning the bathrooms. Very important in the Navy because of the close proximity of the troops. They're laying 3 high, probably a foot apart. So the Navy is really clean. I picked the Navy because I really wanted to get into Navy aviation. I knew that I would either be on a large ship or a air base, probably flying in larger airplanes. So that's why I really wanted to be in a Navy, not necessarily being on as a shipboard sailor. I was a little different in the aviation part. The worst probably day was I didn't know how to swim when I went in the Navy, and yeah, I didn't really have much training, but you had to be able to swim around the pool in boot camp before you could graduate. So that was a challenge, but I did make it. And then the best day probably in my Navy career was I was stationed on a air base in Japan, about 20-30 miles from Tokyo, or about that same distance from Yokohama. And when I went into the service, they told me, don't volunteer for anything. But I have to say, the best day was when I volunteered to clean up a dump, and the plane crew officer came to me and he said, I want you to be on my plane crew. So great advance. Most memorable experiences, I would say I traveled all over the Far East, got to see a lot of things, which I enjoyed very much. I was stationed in Japan, like I said, but we flew into the Philippines, Okinawa, Hong Kong, Korea. So I still think today that was the greatest vacation I ever had. I flew with a pilot who was a fighter pilot in Korea. When he got in the air, that was the safest man I probably ever flew with. He was just tremendous on the airplanes. I remember one day we flew out of Korea, and in Seoul, Korea, the mountain comes very close to the end of the runway, and we were taxiing down the runway, and we weren't getting off the ground. The regular pilot was afraid that we were tail heavy, and so we didn't want to go in the air too fast. And this pilot that I really enjoyed he just grabbed a hold of this stick and we went in the air pretty fast. I have to admit, I was pretty much an 8 to 5 job. I never saw combat. I never was anywhere near danger. Our airplane was a 4-engine propeller plane that would fly on one engine. We flew over the ocean most of our time. We were transporting anything that we could haul. It might be a coffin, it might be an airplane engine, people. Nobody ever wore parachutes. After I left the service, I came back as a farmer and was that till I was 80 years old. And my military service that was any GI Bill that I participated in was on the farm. We had instructors that we would go to meetings about 3 times a week, and that lasted, I think, for 2 years. So we got paid for that, paid pretty well. It worked out. I was just starting to farm for myself, so the extra income, and most of it was at night schools. And so that I gained a lot from the service. I wish every boy who was 18 years old could go through boot camp. You grow up so fast, and the discipline that you have there is something that you will remember the rest of your life.
Hello, my name is Corinne Janovic. I live right here in Plainview, Nebraska. I enlisted in the military, the Army Nurse Corps, to be directly, because at age 17, during the Vietnam War, they were looking for nurses, and the government said that they would pay for my nursing education if I would enlist. It sounded like a win-win situation to me, so I did. My dad was a Marine, and I come from a family of veterans, so it only seemed like, well, that's just what you do to pay back for all the good things that our country has done for us. I actually enjoyed basic training. To me, it was like a Girl Scout camp on steroids, and I loved it. And as far as the first few days as being in there, I think basic training prepared me well for what I'd expected to find in a hospital. If I had been in any other part of the military, maybe it had been different, but I already knew what a nurse was supposed to do. So the basic training just told me who I was supposed to listen to and who I was supposed to talk to. The biggest challenge, I thought, that when I was on active duty was when I had to engage in what I would call reverse racism. I was a nurse on the ward that I was at, which was a septic surgery ward. That was a returning Vietnam veterans that had infected wounds, and then the other part of it was a psych part for the drug addicts that came back from Vietnam. And I had an all-black staff that night. My corpsmen were black, my supervisor was black, my civilian nurses were black, and I had one bay of all black patients, and the corpsman came and said, "They refuse to do their treatment. What are you going to do about it?" And I thought, I just don't know. So I went in there and said, "It's your body. If you don't want to take care of it, it's still up to you." And walked out hoping nobody would throw a shiv in my back. They didn't. The treatments were completed. And I thought, oh gosh, I really understand how people feel when they are treated unlike anybody else. If I could go back into service time, I was 1 year out of being able to stay in the service and still had a family. When I was in, you were automatically medically discharged if you became pregnant. Well, I had to choose between having a family or having a career as a nurse, and so I chose family. And I had 2 daughters, and I have 2 or 3 grandchildren, and wouldn't give them up for the world, but I would have liked to have made a career out of the military. After leaving the service, and I came back to the Plainview area, I worked at the Creighton Nebraska Hospital for 11 years, and then I went to the psychiatric hospital in Norfolk for 31 years, and now I'm retired and run a restaurant and do porcelain painting, and it's just great. The psych part of it was interesting because when I was at Fort Bragg, I did not understand how you could be in the middle of a war and become a drug addict. And most of their answers were, we were bored. And I, being a young nurse, didn't have a clue what that was about. And afterwards, when you read about the Vietnam War, you understand how they could have done that. So I think that made me be more empathetic for the psychiatric patients I did take care of later on in life. Today's youth, they have to learn to be patriotic first. You can't love your country until you understand the country. I think you need to have more history. You need to be engaged. If you do that, I think you would find that being in the military is a good way of saying thank you.
And on closing, I just want to convey our appreciation and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, veterans, and to those who shared their stories and for standing up for Old Glory. We all know freedom isn't free. There's a huge price paid for all our liberties. God bless America, land of our birth, and God bless America, the greatest nation on earth.